Hey, welcome back to Aircraft Adventures. I'm Liam Locke, and we're going to try it again. So we're back in the Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 edition. I think this is now version 1.15.8.0 if you're paying attention to that. And the last time was actually going to be my first time in the Aerosoft CRJ, flying from Zurich International Airport to Vienna, Austria. And I'd flown the flight numerous times, never ran into a problem. And if you watched my last video, the emergency landing after I departed out of Zurich, that is because, well, at least what I believe it now is related to is I've got brand new controllers. I mentioned that in the last video. I'm using the Thrustmaster Airbus Edition throttle quadrant and the flight stick. And the throttle quadrant comes or gets auto-configured in Microsoft Flight Simulator for the additional add-ons. The flaps and the landing gear, and I don't have those pieces. And apparently you escape out and go mess with your controls and come back in, it would trip the flap handle and trip the spoiler as well. And it was kind of weird, and I made a comment about that when I was making the video. Didn't really pay much attention to it, but I think what ultimately happened is, even though this kind of occurred a couple times in the start of that video, even though the flap handle was back in the retracted position, I think the flaps were up the entire time, and they weren't even visually up on the aircraft when we were flying. So I think the entire time I was trying to climb in that last video, I think the flaps, according to the aircraft modeling, whatever, it had the impression that the flaps were up, even though there was no warning, no visual indication, the handle's in the correct position. And I think that's what was causing the problem, trying to climb and causing us practically to fall out of the sky as we were going in for our landing. But anyway, I've disabled that. I think that issue is resolved, and we're going to try this flight one more time. And I'm going to walk through the cold and dark, because this will be the first time I've actually recorded it in the CRJ, and it's been a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun learning a new aircraft. But it is kind of remarkable how different things are from one aircraft to the next. So it does feel like you're kind of, learning all over again how to interact and work with an aircraft and fly it. And I started to comment in my last video. I'm going to jump into the aircraft here. I started to mention that it's also a little bit unique in the CRJ, being a small airliner, that we don't have auto thrust, and we really have to pay attention to the thrust. And even though this seems like it shouldn't be that big of a deal, it does actually create additional workload when you're just cruising or coming in for a landing. There's certainly additional work you need to pay attention to in order to control the speed of the aircraft. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. I did create my own custom checklist, as I kind of do automatically, just to get myself familiar with the systems and what my flow is going to be. And if it's not perfect, by all means, please comment. I try to get it right. I always look for ways to improve my startup flow, my checklist. So I definitely appreciate any feedback you might have. We're going to go ahead and get started. So basic, just checks to make sure that things are in the expected position. We don't want any parts of the aircraft to move unexpectedly once we put power into the aircraft. So I mean, there's nothing really to check up here, but they say check the breakers, make sure nothing's out. Nothing really modeled there for us to do. We want to check the emergency flap switch. It's down here in the normal position, so that's good. Our ADG, right, our air-driven generator, is stowed, so that's fine. Weather radar should be off. It is off here and off on the first officer sign, no issues. Check the flaps and the landing gear. Flaps are retracted, right, flaps 0. We're checking the spoilers as well. Spoiler is retracted all the way up. Take a look at the landing gear. Landing gear is in the down position. We'll look over here at the nose wheel steering. So nose wheel steering is off. Then we'll go up top and look at the hydraulic pumps. All the hydraulic switches are in the off position. And now at this point we are ready to put power to the aircraft, so we'll go up and hit the battery master switch. So up top here, electrical power, battery master. And yay, the aircraft is coming to life. First order of business I have here is I want to go ahead and get the navigation system going right away. So I'm going to go down and get the inertial reference system enabled. We're going to go to nav down here and nav. And then next order of business is I want to get, really should be the first order of business. I want to get the ground power cart connected. We'll go ahead and get our ground air cart connected, even though there is no such thing right now, but for simulation purposes, we'll go ahead and get that going. And we'll get the doorway opened up. Very nice. I love the modeling of the aircraft. It looks great. I love having the ability to control the door in the cargo bay. Completely ignore the fact that Microsoft still hasn't fixed the ground support, so our GPU is driving all over the place and through other vehicles because it can't figure out how to get aligned with the aircraft. So it'll keep doing this little twisty turny thing until finally it's going to give up and it's going to slide into position and right itself. It's kind of silly. Honestly, you know, if FS Dream Team is listening, I can't wait for GSX, please. It's so silly. Anyway, so we have ground power now, and we want to go back up top to the overhead console, and we're going to go ahead and go straight to our external power. Oh, you know what? I read my checklist wrong. While getting the inertial reference system is actually one of the early steps, I goofed here a little bit. What I had down nav on my checklist, and what I actually meant was the navigation light switch. You know, I should have known that. I've been through this a couple times. I want to get the dome light turned on in an aircraft. Just makes it a little easier to see. It makes it easier for the ground crew to see us outside when we're communicating with them. And then my initial nav is actually the light, which I knew that. I don't know what I was thinking, but now we get the nav lights on outside. So that's what we meant to do. With the external power on, then I would go to the IRS and get it set to the nav position. We've already done that, so it's getting ready to go. And now I want to get the integrated lights, right, all the console and the backlit lights behind all the controls turned on so we have better visibility inside the cockpit. These overhead lights turned on as well. The overhead lights and the overhead console, the backlit lights, seem to be less bright than down in the lower part of the cockpit. I'm not sure why that is, but visually that's what it appears to be, because I've got them at full blast where I don't have the ones in the lower part of the cockpit full blast, and they just seem to be brighter. So with this, we will double check our power. Right, battery master on, external power, DC service is off. These are all flush and not tripped. Nothing is illuminated. The generators are all in the auto position, and we don't have any auto transfer enabled. Those are all flush and off, so that is good to go. And then before we continue with the flow at the top, I want to go down to the CDU and just take a look at it briefly. So we've got our status page. AirAct database has been updated recently. Got our UTC time is good. We'll go to next page. Now this is a bug that's been reported. It says status page 1 of 1, but there's actually 2 pages, so we can do next page. Here we'll get our aircraft model. We are in the CRJ 700. See our maximum takeoff weight of 34 tons basically. And what we want to do is our position initialization. So we'll click the right select button all the way down at the bottom, number 6. And see here we've got our last FMS position. We can go ahead and drop in our airport. So LSZH. I really wish I had keyboard control over this. I'm a little bit slow clicking the buttons. So LSZH, now we can pick from either one of these. Either one seems to work without issue. So just click the appropriate select button, drops it down here in a scratch pad, and then we're going to set position. And now that is done. And we can move on to fuel and payload from here. So we're going to go over to the EFB. I believe I have one of these buttons set up. There we go. Here's the EFB. We're going to go to performance page. And we want to look at our flight plan because we need to get some information from it. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the flight plan up over here. So here in our flight plan, this is my original flight plan that I had filed with SimBrief. We're flying the same plan, so no changes here. Zurich to Vienna, and we want to get fuel. So required fuel for this flight is going to be 3.4 metric tons, basically 3.5 metric tons if we round up, or 3,475 kilograms. And then we want to look at the weight as well. Weight is going to be, our payload is 7.1 metric tons, 68 passengers on board, so pretty much a full aircraft today. I think max capacity is 70 in this aircraft. And that's what we're going to set up. So 68 passengers. So we'll go back here into the aircraft. So back to our EFB, currently set at 52 passengers. I don't think this has been fixed yet, but you do need to kind of select so that basically click on it so it's highlighted. So 52 is highlighted. We can now use these controls, right, to advance the numbers till we get to our correct passenger count. But once you do that, I think you have to hit the enter key. And you see the payload balancing just jumped when we hit the enter. So even though we'd use these arrow keys to kind of set the number of passengers, I don't believe it took correctly or wasn't set correctly. So now it's in the correct position. We want to adjust cargo as well, and we said 7.1 metric tons. So we'll adjust the weight in the back part of the aircraft. We're going to push this up, and what I'm looking at here is I want to go down to my my payload. So here's payload, right? 6.2 or 6,294 kilograms, and we want to get it up to 7.1. So we're going to push this up a little bit more. So there's 7.1. We can push it up a little bit more, so we're just over 7,104 kilograms. That looks pretty good. Make sure you hit the enter key. So we'll do the enter key one more time. I'm not putting any of the weight in the forward cargo. My center of gravity looks pretty good right now, no issues with it, but we do need to adjust the fuel, and we said the fuel amount was coming in at 3,475, so basically 3.5 metric tons. So we'll back this down. There's 3,573. That's fine for our purposes. So 3,573, 3.5 metric tons. That's what we'll go with. And we need to make sure we hit the enter key once again. And notice that I wasn't highlighted on it, so I'm highlighting it. I'm going to hit the enter key just to make sure that it took. Write it down, make note of it. You'll need that information here at some point. And then once we've got this, we want to click the button to do set payload in the simulator. So we're going to click that. Okay, well notice as soon as we set the payload, right, we adjusted the weight of the aircraft, and all of a sudden the readings have changed. So the information that we just noted for center of gravity and takeoff trim have just adjusted, and we need to make note of the new settings. Now we can verify that that change has been applied, right, by going and looking at our payload. Notice that our fuel is no longer at the 50% range, it's at 52%, and we can also switch up here from liters to kilograms. Go down here and look at fuel 3,573. That is an exact match to what we just set in the EFB. And then take a look at our payload. Now this is where it gets a bit funky, because payload according to the simulator is 5.1, which is not correct. We were shooting for 7.1, and according to payload here in the EFB, we did set it for 7.1, but that is not what's being reported inside the simulator. So that needs to be resolved. I'm not sure whose issue that is or where that disconnect is, or if it is a disconnect, but it certainly visually appears to be a disconnect. We're just going to ignore it and move on. Notice up here also that our center of gravity seems to be close, but not quite exact. It says 19.68 versus 19.2 in the aircraft. But we are at least within tolerance, so we don't need to make any changes there. So we're going to let that go, and we're going to move on with the setup. So with the fuel and payload in place, now we want to go back and continue our setup in the aircraft. So go back over here, back to the overhead console. I want to go ahead and get my lights situated. So we're going to do the emergency light switch. We're going to get that armed. We're going to get the seatbelt signs actually put to on, no smoking set to on. Verify that the emergency locator system is armed and reset, that is in the correct position. Now I actually looked at the FCOM to work through some of the startup process, and it's got things definitely out of order. It doesn't seem to follow a flow per se, even though it does refer to flows. And then their checks in the startup, and I don't recall if this was the tutorial or not, they talk about actually looking at the oxygen mask. So there are things that we can do down here to actually test the oxygen, make sure that it's good. There's the sky cam that we can look at. If you want to play with this is modeled. It's got various cameras that you can look at inside the aircraft. And then on the first officer side, we've got the audio panel. We just want to make sure that none of these are lit up. DCU1, DCU2 are closed and flush. And then from here, we're going to go up and actually start our flow in the overhead display, or overhead console, I should say. So we already did the electrical power check. That is all good to go. We do need to do our fire detection, but at this point, what we need to do, especially in the CRJ, is we want to have visibility on the ecass page before we start doing some of these checks. So in your simulator, you want to actually open it up so we can see it. So it's a little bit large. I'm going to bring it over here, make it a little bit smaller. So now we're ready to go on with our flow up top. We want to do our fire detection FireX monitor. So we're just going to click the button to do a test, and you'll notice in the ecass we get the fire system OK popped up into the display, and then it goes away almost immediately. I'll click that again just so you can see it. So you see fire system OK at the top, and then it goes away. No change here. The hydraulic buttons here, the shutoff valve should be not illuminated and flush. So they look good. We have our nav light on already. We don't need to turn on any additional lights. I mean, you could turn on the logo if you wanted. You could turn the logo light on. We'll check our fuel panel. We don't need the fuel pumps to be on at this time, so we're going to leave those, the boost pumps, in the off position. The rest of these switches should be flush and not illuminated. Bleed air should be up in the normal position for a cross bleed, so that's normal. Bleed valve should be in auto. This isolation valve, and according to the FCOM, the ISIL switch, this isolation, should be in the open position, so we're going to switch that to open. Bleed source should be both engines. This is because it's controlled automatically, so we just leave it in the both engine position. And from here, we're going to move down to the APU, and we are going to go ahead and start up the APU. So again, monitoring the ecass page, which is why we have it on the screen, so we can see it at the same time we're looking at the overhead console. We've got the power fuel. We want to go ahead and click that. We'll see the APU in byte. This is the test, and then we see the APU shutoff valve open, and we verify down here that we've got the APU door open. That is good to go. So now we can actually start the APU, and we'll see APU start show up in ecass, and we'll see the exhaust gas temperature and the rotation of the APU actually start up. And this is flowing really fast. We'll jump outside here for a second, and we can hear it starting up. Now, notice something. Remember I said I was having an issue with the Thrustmaster flight controller. Notice that our flaps are in fully deployed position, which is not expected. They should not be. And this goes back to what I was saying the last time that we had that emergency landing in the CRJ, is because I just made that change during this setup of the flight sim. I really want to make sure that everything is in the correct position, so I need to retract the flaps, but I don't have any hydraulic power right now, so they really shouldn't move. And if we look inside the aircraft, at the flaps position, we do see that they are fully retracted, but the ecass page is showing us that they are fully deployed. So we have full flaps, but the switch says they're not. So I think this is a perfect example of, well, it's not quite perfect, but it is an example of how you can have an inconsistency between the ecass page and the actual position of the flaps and what the control actually states. And I think that's what happened to us last time, is the opposite, where our control for the spoilers was in the fully retracted, and even though the outside of the aircraft didn't show the spoilers deployed, which we don't see right now, I believe they were deployed during the flight. So this is interesting. I'm glad this kind of occurred. I'm curious though, if we try and adjust the flaps right now, will the flaps move? So let's take a look at that outside. I'm gonna try and change the flap position, and there they go. Lo and behold, they are actually moving in the aircraft without any hydraulic pressure whatsoever. All the hydraulic switches are in the off position. And notice that I only retracted one position, and the control went from the 0 position to the 30, which is expected. And if I just retract one, the flaps moved, the ecass page actually did update, but we have no hydraulic pressure, folks. In case that's... anyway, you can see right here, they're all in the off position. Except for that, I just clicked it on, but they're all in the off position. So we shouldn't have had any real movement of the flaps. I'm going to go ahead and retract them all the way, because look at that, they are actually going to work. So that probably needs to be fixed. I'll go back in aircraft and just verify. So now we see, right, flaps fully retracted 0, and the control now agrees. So that's what we expect. Just for grins and giggles, so let's go ahead and deploy the spoilers, right? So we'll bring the spoilers all the way. Look outside. No activity, right? No spoiler deployment, which is in fact to be expected because I don't have any hydraulic pressure. So we'll just put that back, and we'll continue with our checkup, and we'll check those flaps once again once I get the hydraulic systems turned on, which won't be too much longer. Left and right engine switches should be back in the off position. They're of course off. They're flush. We're not starting the engines quite yet. And now we're at the point where we want to check the hydraulics. But before we do that, we need to change the ecass page to the hydraulic page. So we're going to go down here to the center console, change over to hydraulics, and now we can see the hydraulic systems displayed. We can see that we have appropriate hydraulic fluid in all three systems. Temperature looks to be good. It's in the green, but we have no pressure. And these are the systems that actually are controlled by the hydraulic systems. So first thing we want to do is we want to do a pressurization check. So we're going to go up and turn each of the systems on. So system 1. And we can see now we have electrical power running the hydraulics. We have good pressure. We're not losing any pressure. Not losing any hydraulic fluid, so that appears to be good. An unusual, right? That was a surprising spike in temperature because it was 9 degrees Celsius, and literally we just jumped up 19 degrees in seconds. Not sure I understand why that change occurred. We're going to go to the next system. So system 3. We've got good pressure, 3000. Notice the temperature did not change on it, so this is unusual. I don't know what happened here with this temperature. 9 degrees Celsius, no pressure loss, good pressure. That should be fine. Now we're going to check system 2. And And notice the temperature spiked here all again as we were talking to 28, and now the temperature's up to 27 in the middle system. So I'm going to have to look that up. That's kind of peculiar, and that's a really, really rapid change in temperature. I find that hard to believe that that's what happens. But pressure is good, so with that said, we're going to drop all of these systems back into the auto position, so they're going to shut down pending startup of the engines. But the system number 3 here actually works off of electric power. That's what controls our inboard brakes. We're going to turn the power back on to 3A, not 3B. We were testing 3B. We're going to turn the power on to 3A. So we already checked the locator. Emergency locator is situated. Cabin pressurization is set in the correct position. No changes need to be made here at the moment. Our landing elevation we do want to adjust, but we need to change our ecass page back to the standard page. Go back down here and go back to our status. And we can see landing elevation over here in the lower right of the ecass. We'll go back up top and change the landing elevation for this airport, which is I think 1,400 feet. Yeah, airport elevation. Right, so here's Navigraph. 1417, so this goes up in increments of 20 feet. We're going to set it for 1420. We're just going to change this landing elevation dial. Now this is a bit of a tedious, slow process. Actually, this feels like it's sped up. Oh, it never went this fast before. I'm a little surprised by this all of a sudden. It was much slower the last time that I was in the aircraft. 1420 is what we need it to be, so that is great. Makes me wonder if that was a change that was actually applied to the updated sim somehow. Not sure. Continuing on with the checklist. Air conditioning panel. We want the... So we do have the AP on, so we're going to go ahead and turn on the packs. So left and right packs. Air recirculation on. Ram air should be off and flush. Everything else is set here in the auto mode. We don't need to manually control the temperatures set for auto right now. Going on down, we want to do an ice detection test. So here in the anti-ice panel, looking at the ecass, we're going to go ahead and hit the ice detect button. Get ADS heat test is okay. Turn that off again. We don't need any anti-ice at this time. We may need that once we get closer to takeoff. We do want to turn on the windshield heat, so we're going to put that in the low position. And then we're not going to turn on the probes quite yet. We're going to continue on down here to miscellaneous lights. We've already got the dome light in the on position. I'm going to go ahead and set the standby compass, right? It's the compass right down here. We're going to put the light on dim, just so we can see that. Overhead lights, integrated lights are already set. Nothing to change there. Continuing on down now to the captain's side. We're going to make sure that our stall, our pusher control is set here in the on position, and it is. And we want to do a stall test. So up here on the little control panel up here up top, we got stall. We'll uncover it. Click the stall button. And I guess I should make it so you can see the yoke. Do the stall again. And that looks good. Nothing more to change there. We'll get the yoke out of the way. Nose wheel steering switch should still be in the off position. You can double check your clocks, make any adjustments to the clocks as required. Shouldn't have to make any changes there. EFIS panel, I don't really have a lot to change on the EFIS panel at this time. We're still waiting on getting weather information. Format is fine for our purposes. We get the map up. 40 miles, a bit wide. I mean, we could bring it in a little bit tighter for takeoff. We're not turning on any of our VOR switches. We're not going to manually set our speed, so we can ignore that for right now. And we're still waiting weather before we do barometric pressure. Normal is the expected position here for the display. Basically, we're just modifying the multifunction display. We want it to show its normal page of the navigation display as opposed to, right, the primary flight display or the ecass page, which you could do. So we'll leave that in the normal position. From here, we do want to do a cockpit voice recorder test, so hold the button, wait for the little green light to pop, and test is good. Going down here to the center pedestal. So anti-skid is in the armed position and expected, and we can kind of make sure that that is working by switching it to off, and we'll get the warning up here, right? Anti-skid, inboard, outboard, not set. Put it back in armed and those go away. So that's our test, and now that's successful. Take a look at the landing gear bay overheat, so we can put that in the up position.
Gear bay overheat.
And you'll see the warning up there on the primary ecass page. Turn that off. Also make sure that the warning system, so landing gear overheat fail warning light, the yellow there in the primary ecass display shows. Landing gear in a down position, engines are synced via N1 rotation, that's expected, normal. Lamp test, you pretty much know what you can do with that. And then indicator lights, I have mine set for bright. No changes to the ground proximity configuration, those should all be flush and not illuminated. And then looking further down here to the throttle quadrant area, our pitch and roll disconnects are in a stowed position. They're not pulled out and twisted. Our spoilers are set for auto. Our reversers, we'll go ahead and arm those in preparation for takeoff. We don't need to make any change to the spoilers right now. They are fully retracted. Throttle is in the shutoff position, and flaps are fully retracted. So now we'll move down here to the center pedestal. We do want to set our transponder, which is currently set to 2000. So we'll go ahead and select that, and we'll... It's turning much faster now, 2560. I like that a lot, that it spins. It rotates the numbers considerably faster than it did previously. So 2560 looks good. Take a look at the radio panel. So we are active for VHF1. That's the channel we'll be talking on. Aerosoft has done a just fantastic job of modeling this particular panel. There's a lot of adjustments that you can actually make to this panel. We don't need to make any more. We can kind of leave it as it is set right now. So pretty much its default position. The current weather radar and terrain radar are not working on the CRJ, or at least as of the last flight that I was in this aircraft, they were not working. We're going to go down here and get our standby radio, put in standby. Don't need to turn on the transponder yet, so we'll leave that off. We do need to turn on the stabilizer trim controls. Now if you look at the ecass page, so look at the ecass page over here, when I turn on the first channel, we see stabilizer CH2 is inoperable. We need to make sure we turn on both. So you'll get that warning when you work with these. Mock trim, turn that on. And then up here, we're just going to jump up and look at the yaw damper. Same thing, click button. We see yaw damper 2 is inoperable. Make sure we turn it on as well. We don't want any errors about the stabilizer trim or the yaw damper in the ecass page. So now those are set. Look here for the display fan and the avionics fan should be both in the normal position, and they are. We've already set the IRSs, so they're in nav. They're already aligned and good to go. We don't have any rudder trim changes we need to make. We've already set the lighting. I don't do anything with the flight deck door. That may work. I haven't really messed with that too much yet. Skipping on down here, so we've got our chime and our call for working with the flight crew. Looking at our source select panel, should all be set to the normal position. So normal, normal, normal is good. The center radio panel is set VHF1. No other changes are required on this radio panel. Parking brake is currently pulled and twisted, so it's up and it is actually engaged, so parking brakes are on. And then we already verified ADG, landing gear, manual release and the emergency flap switch are normal and stowed. At this point, we are ready to contact, or we're ready to get our ATIS weather report. We'll make a note of that. So ATIS for departure, and I'm looking at the navigraphs, are right at the top of our airport information chart that we just looked at. We can see ATIS for departure 129.005, and that's what we're going to program into the radio. So we'll do that now. And we'll go ahead and set that. And be prepared to write. Or not. 129.005 is not broadcasting any current weather. And when that happens, not a big deal. Possibly another frequency. So we can go back to Navigraph. And here, if we look at Airport, Zurich, comms, ATIS is 129.05 or 125.730. So we'll try the other channel at this point. 125.730.
Zurich Airport information. Quebec 15000. Wind tree 49er@15. Visibility tree in heavy rain. Sky condition few clouds at 900 feet. Few clouds at 4,600 feet. Few clouds at 11,600 feet. Temperature 8. Dew point 10. QNH 29.80. ILS runway tree 4 in use. Landing and departing runway tree 4. DSR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft.
So we have Quebec. We got our wind 349, 15 knots, 3-mile visibility and heavy rain. We got our cloud layers. Not sure that that's accurate. Temperature 8 degrees. Dew point 10. Our barometric pressure 29.80. Runway 34 in use. Landing and departures, which I think that matches with our flight plan. That was the expected runway. I'm just taking a quick look at that. And yes, 34. 34 is good to go. Now with that information, we want to get into the flight management guidance system and go ahead and get it fully configured for our flight today. So we're going to go here to flight plan, leaving out of Zurich, going to Vienna, so LOWW, and our originating runway is going to be 34. And my alternate airport, LHBP, I doubt we'll have need of that today, but I'm going to go ahead and just, for the purpose of practice, go ahead and get that programmed in. And then flight number today is 6501. From here, we'll go to our departure arrival page. It's going to take us straight to our departure since that's the closest airport. And the flight plan has us departing runway 34 using the DGIS 4F SID, Standard Instrument Departure, to the DGIS waypoint. So we'll take a look here. DGIS, well, let's get the runway first. So runway 34 is already selected. DGIS, we're missing the S, but it's DGIS 4F is correct, so we'll pick 4F. And that should be sufficient. It's not prompting us for anything else, so we'll go ahead and execute that change, and that should give us our initial, next page here, DGIS 4F SID with our first waypoint being DGIS, so that's good. And then from here, we'll go ahead and finish the flight plan entry at this point since we're already on this page. now we have our star, the Nemo 1W star to Vienna. Runway 34 is going to be the expected assignment. We'll do that right now. So we've come up with departure. We want to hit departure arrival again. We'll get our selection page, select arrival. Arrival, we need to pick our runway first. We're doing an ILS arrival for runway 34 via the NEMA 1W. That is correct. We'll select that, and then here in Europe, or at least at this airport, things are a little different. It's almost like there's a multiple star procedure. So from NEMA 1W, and this is probably easier for me to show than to try and explain. So let's take a look at Navigraph. Go out here at Navigraph. I dropped some of these in here immediately. I had to add on the NEMA 1W star. So if we look at that first, and look at the chart overlay, we can see that this looks like any other star. So we'll come in. NEMA is the last waypoint transition where we enter the star, and then we'll start our descent into Vienna. There comes a point here where we reach the Ballad waypoint, and at the Ballad waypoint we're at 8,000 feet, and we still have all this other twists and turns in our approach in order to get lined up with our initial approach fix down to the runway. But this is not covered on this particular star, so there's a second procedure, and I had to kind of work through the various available stars. So if we go here to not Zurich, when you actually change airports, and we look at the stars for Vienna, we've got a number of stars, including the one that we're looking at right now, right, which is the NEMA, where's that? NEMA 1W. So this is the one that we're actively looking at the moment. And from NEMA, we've got to continue from the NEMA 1W. We've got to continue from Ballad. So I look down here. There's multiple Ballad references, and just to spare going back and forth, if we look here at this 3N one, to look at this, it doesn't make any sense. Like, oh man, what is all this nonsense, right? I mean, I do see my Ballad waypoint, but there's a lot going on in here, and it's not clear where the runway is initially. It just so happens it's up here at the top center. So, okay, wait a minute. The easiest thing to do is make sure you look at this as an overlay. So if I open it up as an overlay, now all of a sudden it starts to make more sense, because I can see I have my Ballad waypoint, and I transition onto this Ballad 3N, right? Ballad 3N listed right here. This is how we're going to navigate and descend down to our initial approach fix altitude, and then start our descent down to the runway. And it took a little bit to figure that out, but if that helps you out, I'm glad. I hope it does. But that's what we're doing. So we'll go from one star into this Ballad 3N transition, and then to our approach down to the runway. And that's important because back here in the aircraft, we had picked our star, right? NEMA 1W, ILS 34. What's the transition? We're not relying on vectors. We're using the BAL 3N. So we're going to select that. That's selected. We're going to go ahead and execute this change, and now our flight plan should be good to go from start to finish, and we can start to inspect it up here in the navigation display. We want to switch mode though. We want to go to our, we want to look here at our plan mode. Probably need to zoom in just a little bit so we can see, and let's go to flight plan here. Next page. And actually, I forget, it's a little different in the CRJ. We need to go to advanced, yes. So advanced, we are going to follow the flight plan now. So we'll go to next waypoint, ZH 570 above 3,500 feet. And then we've got a turn here, next waypoint, ZH569. We're going to continue this out and just make sure that we've got a flight plan that's fully connected. We don't have any weird loopbacks or branches off, anything unexpected all the way to Vienna. We'll get closer in here. Here's Niemel, right? So Niemel is our transition to the star. And notice, oh wait, there's a problem here. It just went blank. So I must have a discontinuity in my flight plan. If we go back to the flight plan information, we'll scroll down this list. And whoop, I'm already down here. Previous page. Direct. Actually, not flight plan. We need to go to the legs page. Sorry about that. Go to the legs page. Scroll down the list. Here's Niemel. And then here's our discontinuity. And Niemel is actually in here twice. So we need to correct that. So I'm just going to left select on the waypoint. So Niemel, drop it in the scratch pad here. We're going to page back up. Go to this Niemel, and we're going to drop it into place right on top of it. Get rid of that flight discontinuity. Go ahead and exec this change. We'll scan forward. Everything seems to still be connected. Here's Ballad. This is the next transition to our transition approach. No disconnects there. Seems to continue forward all the way to the runway. No more disconnects. So now we can go back. If we just back out here, back to Niemel. Once again, we'll put Niemel in the scratch pad. Go down to our multifunction display advanced option, and we're going to go to the waypoint. So we'll center the waypoint we just selected, which is Niemel. So here's the Niemel waypoint where we had our disconnect before. We'll go ahead and next waypoint. Now it's continuing. Great. And there, nope, that's not. Here's Ballad. So here's Ballad. There we have our turn. And now we can start to see, and I'll zoom out just a little bit. Sure enough, from Ballad, we've got all of the additional waypoints we need in order to navigate to the initial approach fix and down to the runway. So flight plan looks to be in good shape. We can go back to the legs page, and we should be done with this configuration. We'll also go back to the map display. 20 nautical miles. We can actually zoom in here for takeoff just a little bit, make it easier to see. So now we're set. So we've got just a few more things to do. Performance initialization. So we need to go to the perf page. So from here, we'll click on performance, and we'll go to performance initialization. Now this is another page where we do need to put some information in, but this can come from the electronic flight bag, the EFB. So if we go back over here to the EFB, and I'm going to go ahead and just take this ecass page off the screen for the time being. From here, performance page, we've got copy performance init data to the flight management system. That's all we want to do. So I'll make sure that I'm on this. Copy perf int to FMS. So we click the button. We go back over and look at the flight management computer. Notice that all of a sudden we have data populated on this page, where previously we did not. Alright, so 68 passengers, 84 kilograms per passenger. Is that what it's telling me? That's weird. Cargo is 1398 cargo. And so, alright, well, this is interesting. So what we've got over here is the plane believes that we're at 7.1 metric tons, which is what we expected and what the flight plan called for. So 68 passengers at an average passenger weight of 84 kilograms, plus cargo of 1,398 kilograms actually takes us to 7,110 kilograms if you do the math. So that's positive. That's expected. And then fuel of 3569 is spot on because we're running the APU, so we have been burning through a little bit of our fuel. We've also got our zero fuel weight information and our gross weight. So this all looks good. The only additional change we need to make here is put in what our assigned cruising altitude is. 33,000 feet. So we need to do F in the CRJ. You need to have this leading F or it doesn't take it. 330. Now I seem to recall the CRJ is going to get up to a certain point and then climb performance starts to deteriorate. We may not make 33,000, but we'll go ahead and put it in as our cruising altitude. So no other changes that need to be set on this page. From here, we can go look at our VNAV information. And here we're just verifying information. So transition altitude is actually not 18,000 feet. We do need to make that change. Alright, so Navigraph real quick. This is our standard instrument departure. So we're going to take off, we're going to loop back around, fly the SID out to DGIS, and then continue on our flight plan. But what we're interested in is this transition altitude is 7,000 feet. And that's what we need to enter. $7,000. Now we can look at our climb speed for takeoff will be it's going to be 250 knots or low or below 10,000 feet, and then we'll climb at 290 or 0.74 Mach up to our cruising altitude. We'll go to next page here because there's 3 pages. Well, once we're in cruise, we'll cruise at 300 knots indicated airspeed or 0.74, whichever one is appropriate. And then for descent, that's the next page, we'll descend at 0.74 or 290 knots indicated airspeed down to flight level 10,000 feet, and then we'll continue our descent at speeds 250 knots indicated airspeed or lower, with a vertical path ideally of 3 degrees. And at this point we could do our takeoff briefing. So taking off runway 34 from Zurich. DGIS 4F SID for the DGIS waypoint. Initial climb clearance is 5,000 feet, so we'll climb to 5,000 feet. And then we'll get to where we would expect climb guidance shortly after takeoff once we've reached 5,000 feet. So we will set that up here in the our autopilot control, which actually goes by another name. Now I wrote this down. I'm going to go back and just make sure that I've got this correct and not refer to it as the MCP, because I always want to call it the MCP, but what it is in the CRJ, I guess they call it the Automatic Flight Control System. So the AFCS is where we're going to set our initial climb altitude of 5,000 feet. And we can see currently, if you look here at the primary flight display, it's set for 10,000. So we can go ahead and adjust that right now. So the AFCS up here, altitude control, drop that down to 5,000. Oh, this is so much nicer. It must have been a sim change because the dials move the numbers at such a faster rate. I really, really like it. Alright, so we're just about ready to do our startup, our pushback and our startup. We want to go ahead and get, I'm going to switch this CDU back to legs. I want to look and get some things disconnected. So we are on the APU. I'm curious, we look up top here, we still show that the external power is connected to the aircraft. Now I probably should have checked this sooner. If we go back and look here at the ecass page, and let's switch that actually over to electric. We can see that the APU is actually providing power to the aircraft, so the external power is not. We can disconnect that now. So we'll turn that off. Actually, it's already off, and we want to disconnect it from the aircraft. So we'll go back over here to the EFB, go back to aircraft. We'll disconnect the external power. We'll disconnect ground air. We don't need it anymore, and we're going to go ahead and close up the passenger door and prepare for pushback.
Captain, the cabin is secure. All passengers are aboard.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the captain and crew, welcome aboard this flight. We hope you enjoy flying with us. Before takeoff, we would like to encourage all passengers to watch our cabin crew display the safety features of the aircraft.
And we want to get the wheel chocks out of place. They're currently in place, so we're going to move those. The parking brake is actually set. So that is good. Doors are closed. All the other stuff has been disconnected. GPU, air card disconnected. Service doors are closed. Passenger sign are on. Landing elevation is already set. At this point, we are ready to go ahead and get the boost pumps, the fuel pumps turned on. So go up here, we'll get those turned on. We're almost ready for pushback. Get our altimeter set. We never did do that. So looking down here at the primary flight display, altimeter set for 2992. We do need to adjust that to 2980. Okay. And we do need to set this in multiple places because these things are not linked up. Get kind of spoiled with that linking that goes on in some of the other aircraft. So 2980 here on the standby. And notice that the first officer's has his own independent setting as well. They're not linked. I don't know that there's a configuration option to link those, but I'm not going to mess with that. I'm just going to leave his set as it is for the time being. Our runway heading today is going to be 332, so we can go ahead and put the heading bug to our runway heading. So heading 332. Excellent. Now we need to set our V speeds as well. We need to look back over here at the EFB, back on the performance page. We do have wet conditions today, so we'll change that to wet. We are doing flaps 8 takeoff. We see V1 of 124, 130, 140. We could manually set these, or we could just say set all. We're going to click set all, and then confirm in the primary flight display that they are in fact set. And if we look down here, we can see V1 124 rotate at 130, V2 at 140, and then our climb, safe climb of 191 is set. So that makes it easy working with the EFB and setting your V speeds. We are ready for pushback. I want to look up here and get our beacon lights turned on, give the ground crew a heads up. Take a look outside. The weather has gotten much worse since we've been sitting here getting the aircraft set up. Heavy rain, and it's not going to be very pretty departing the airport. I do like to fly with live weather, but I wished we had better weather today so we could enjoy the scenery. The mountains here are beautiful here in and around Switzerland. I mean, if you haven't seen the real thing, you need to go to Switzerland. Just amazing. Nowhere in the world will you experience mountains as incredible as what's in Switzerland. Well, maybe one other place, but this is pretty awesome. Just such a beautiful place to go. Getting ready to do our pushback, we need to make sure that we know what direction. Since we're going to runway 34, I want to bring up the airport chart. Here we go. So I'll take a quick look at this again. So Navigraph, we are parked down here at the terminal. So we're going to push back and to the right because runway, no, hold on. Yeah, back and to the right. Runway 34 is down here. So back to the right, we're going to come out. We're going to hang a hard left and travel down. Looks like taxiway E. Is that taxiway E? Yes, taxiway E. Not quite all the way down. We'll hop on the runway here at E8. That'll be our plan, and then we should be ready for departure. So I'll keep that up just so I can see it, but make sure I go back to the aircraft here for you. Alright, so we know our pushback. Get back here in the right position, and we are using Pushback Express. If you are not using Pushback Express, I highly recommend that you use Pushback Express from FS to Crew. One of the best add-ons that you can bring into the Microsoft Flight Simulator right now, in my personal opinion. I just love having control of the tow vehicle, being able to turn it when I want to turn it, and basically control the entirety of the pushback of the aircraft. So it's up and ready to go. I'm using a different capture source so you can actually see that panel on the screen, so that's kind of cool. And I think everything is set. Just a quick spot check here. We are getting ready to push back. I'm going to go ahead and turn the transponder on just in case Zurich tracks planes on the ground with their transponder code. Everything looks good here. I don't have anything else to need set. Legs is set. We should be ready to start the engines up here momentarily. I think we're set. So I want to go outside and also get the camera in position to assist with pushback just so we can visually look at it. I can see that the wheel chocks are in fact removed from the aircraft. We should be ready. No further delay. I am using the button control. I have in the past used voice control, but I'm not going to do that today. We're just going to go ahead and get this pushback started.
Cockpit to ground.
Go ahead, flight deck.
We are ready for pushback and engine start.
Roger. Release the parking brakes, please.
Parking brakes released.
Pushing back.
And look, we've got the cockpit light turned on right now in the aircraft, and it's almost impossible to see in there. That inside cockpit light is not very bright at all. And then unfortunately, Microsoft Flight Simulator, right, we still have lineup issues with the tow vehicle. We get to a quick snap into position. I know, it'll all be fixed in time. So many other great things about this simulator.
You are clear behind, and you can start your engines at your discretion.
Excellent. So we'll try and do this here a little bit quick. So I am ready to start engine 1. We're going to go ahead and do, I'm sorry, engine 2, right engine, so we'll get that going. Hear everything switch. The bleed goes to the engines. We're going to monitor the rotation here, get up to about 20, and then we're going to adjust the throttle. Get in a different position here. So we're just about to hit 20. 20 is about there. We're going to hit this little lock here, push up, let that lock come down, and then pull back. Go back outside and control our pushback while that engine starts up. Oop, wrong way.
Pushback complete. Set parking brakes, please.
Parking brakes set.
Roger. Okay, the tow bar is disconnected and the equipment is clear. We will see you on the left side with the pin.
Thanks, and you can disconnect and go to hand signals.
Thanks. Have a good flight. See you later.
The walkway emergency lights will display to the exits, which are located here.
Okay, we'll get the next engine, verify we're stable, so stable. We'll get the next engine started up.
We would also like to remind you that you should turn off all electronic devices. We thank you for paying attention during this brief presentation.
Just about to hit 20. There goes 20. Alright, engines are starting up. Everything seems to be going smooth there. No issues. Everything's in the green. Looks like engine is stabilizing at idle. And we're in the auto for Gen 1, Gen 2. We should be working on Gen Power. We can spot check that in the ecass page. Go back down here and let me just pop out the ecass page for a moment longer. We're going to close out the Pushback Express. So we'll take a quick look at the lead valves. Lead valves are all set, everything is good to go. Air conditioning packs are good, no issues. We do still have the APU turned on. I said I wanted to look at the power. If we go down to electrical, we'll see that the APU is no longer providing power to the aircraft. They're being provided by the engines, so we can lose the APU. So we'll go ahead and stop the APU. And if we're monitoring the status page, you'll see the APU wind down. We'll give it a chance to wind down and stop. Check our temperature. So we've got rainy conditions right now at the airport. What did I just change? I didn't change that. 2980. And we have 8 degrees Celsius outside, so we don't need to turn on the anti-ice. We'll let go of that for right now. We do need to get our probes turned on. Get those going. We'll leave the anti-ice off. Gonna go ahead and turn the dome light to the off position. Go back down here to the cockpit. We'll get our nose wheel steering situated, so nose wheel steering arm, so we can control the aircraft. And check the APU. APU is powered off, so we'll turn it off now as well. And the display goes away, APU door closes. Take a look. Everything else here is normal. Parking brake is on. We're going to turn it off momentarily. Alright, we do want the left and right reversers armed. No smoking, seatbelt signs are on. Everything is good to go. Brakes are good. Go ahead and get our flaps situated. Alright, so flaps to position 8. We're going to do a flight control check. So again, we'll turn down here to flight controls. Now we'll do left aileron, right aileron. Elevators, up and down, good to go. Rudder left and right. So controls are all good and expected. We can also see our stabilizer trim setting here is 7.8. And recall that we made a note that our center of gravity was 19.2% with a trim setting of 7.2. There you go, 7.2. Brake temperature is good. Taxi lights need to be on, so we're just about ready to taxi. Taxi lights on. Landing lights not on yet. Everything else should be normal here. We're ready to taxi to runway 34. It always takes so long to get to this point, but we're finally ready to drive the aircraft. It's always one of the best parts of the whole experience. And of course, the weather could not be possibly worse. Wow. It is coming down out there. So we said we're going to travel up here, make a hard left, go down to entryway E8 to get on to runway 34. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to get the ecass page off our screen. Hope that the throttle quadrant is in the right position and ready to accelerate. Okay, brakes released. Let's start to push forward. Not release the brakes. I did. What's going on here? being too ginger with it. So I've been making fine-tune adjustments to the throttle quadrant. I completely took out the detents because they were really annoying. I mean, they work only great with the Airbus, quite honestly. And when you're flying the CRJ and you have to manually control thrust, I don't need that spring-loaded mechanism interfering with my ability to completely set and fine-tune set. So I gotta hold it here. It's, you know, once I put the throttle in a position that I want it to be in, I want it to kind of stay there. And I don't want the spring mechanism inside the throttle quadrant. Good lord, aircraft, we need to move here. There we go. Alright, now we're starting to get some speed. I don't want the throttle control to be shifting around, slowing down, or speeding up. I want it to stay exactly where I position it. So we're making our way down taxiway E to entryway E8. Which should be our next entryway here up and to the right for runway 34.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has advised that we are now cleared for takeoff.
No, I haven't. This should be E8 here. Alright, we're going to hold here and get finished setting up. So we'll get our strobe light turned on, get our takeoff, our landing lights here turned on. Transponder is already turned on and ready to go. Everything else looks to be good. Let me go down and just spot check. Transponder, yes. Everything else is set. No warnings. Legs page is up. I'm going to put the legs page up over here as well. We need to go back to our status page for ecass. No warnings, everything is ready to go. Flaps are in position 8. Alright. It's time to make our way out here to the runway and be on our way. I'm going to get up in Navigraph my overlay for the standard instrument departure. Initial climb altitude is 5,000 feet. We'll be making a left-hand turn shortly after takeoff and getting engaged with the flight plan. Also, the CRJ is a little bit different, so pretty much as soon as we get in the air, not much longer, we'll need to go to speed mode to control our rate of climb, and shortly after that we'll go into autopilot. But I do need to have the flight director on. I'm noticing that I don't think I ever turned the flight director on. Oh, nope, it looks like it was on actually. I don't recall turning that on, but Is that on? Yeah, there we go. So it's on now. It's ready to go. Pitch roll, 5,000. Okay. Should be set. So we're going to go with assumed cleared for takeoff. Let's go ahead and get out on the runway. It's really having difficulty getting the plane to go. It's really a little bit sluggish, and I'm sure it's my throttle control right now just because of the adjustments I've been making. I'm being a little bit too light on the throttle. So here we are, we're in position, we're ready for takeoff. Flaps are set. Okay, we are cleared for takeoff. Everything is set. Here we go. We're going to go up to about 60%, 50%, get the plane rolling. I do want to go down here and just grab chrono real quick, start that up, perfect. And now we're going to go into our toga. Airspeed's alive. Try and keep the center line of the runway here. Come on back. V1. Rotate. Positive rate of climb. Gear up. Watching our airspeed, which is climbing really fast. Make sure we're going straight here. I'm turning a little bit, so I'm watching too many things. We're going to do flap retraction here. So flap retraction. Watch, we're climbing a bit hard. Get the nose down, a little too hard of a climb, losing speed. I want to get to about 190, which is about to hit now. We're going to do speed and continue our climb. We're going to try and follow flight director now to keep our speed under control. We're about to hit 4,000 feet. I'm going to do autopilot, engage. We're going to do nav and altitude. There we go, nav and altitude. So I was starting to turn just a little bit early, so now the plane is adjusting. We need to watch our speed because we're at 5,000 feet, and I need to manually take control of the speed because the aircraft will just take off. So we want to try and keep 240, 250, under 250. We are now turning to our next waypoint. Speed is approaching 250, so I'm pulling a lot back out of the throttle. The manual thrust control, you really got to stay on top of that. We're already at our 5,000 foot altitude. Autopilot's engaged, nav and altitude, holding 5,000 feet, coming around to the next waypoint. And losing some speed, so speed up here just a little bit. Trying to keep it between 240 and 250, but I'm not trying to really chase the speed per se. I just don't want it to get going too fast. Which the CRJ will do really quick. At the lower altitudes, it will absolutely cruise up to speed really fast. You notice we got to 5,000 feet in like no time. It's unfortunate that there's really nothing to see out there, so we want to clean up the aircraft. 5,000 feet. Starting to turn towards the next waypoint. Speed is getting a little fast. Pull a little bit more back out of it again. Landing gear is up. Flaps are retracted. We can turn off the reversers at this point. Lights are still on. We can turn off the taxi lights, so we'll do that. Seatbelt signs, everything still stay on. No warning. warnings. Everything is in the green. Flaps still show out there in flaps 1, so we need to do a flap retraction. Still one more. I only did a single flap retraction. So we probably, did we overspeed that flap at 240, 250? We probably did. Flap, it didn't give me a warning though. This is not airspeed. Here we go, flaps 1. Yeah, we did overspeed the flap, 230. But it didn't give us a warning. Huh. Alright, well. It's okay. We'll deal with that. Turning towards our next waypoint. There's absolutely not a thing to see outside. Lights are on. It is pure fog. You can see a little bit of the contrail. But we are now, we should be above 5,000 feet here. We are. We need to start our climb because 2 waypoints away we need to be above 8,000. So this is where thrust control becomes a little bit easier. So I want to change our altitude to, let's say, 10,000. We'll go to 10,000 to start. So is that 10,000? 10,000, and now I want to climb. So we're going to go speed. Hello, speed. There we go, speed. And we'll go to climb mode here. And we've got our speed is set for 243. We can bump that up here by turning the speed dial a little bit. So we'll continue our climb at about 250 up to 10,000 feet. And with speed engaged, as long as I've got the thrust and the climb detente position, the CRJ is actually going to keep the plane at that speed and just control the rate of climb so that we don't speed up or slow down too much. This is the easy part of actually managing the CRJ in flight. This climbing and descending are so easy. You can see our speed's doing a good job of staying right around 250. And you can see in the Annunciator FMS1 climb 250 knots. Wow, it's ugly outside. Jeez. Still nothing to see. Oh, master caution. Why am I getting a master caution? Oh, ice. Alright, ice. Yes, I should have checked that. One up here. Get this ice situated. We'll get an ice warning. Wing ice and engine anti-ice on. Go back down. Alright, we've taken care of that warning. Temperature outside is actually minus... static temperature is minus 6 degrees Celsius against the aircraft. I'm surprised that we're getting an icing warning, but we're going to listen to the aircraft and just turn that on rather than have our weight. Oh, now I'm starting to accelerate, right? As soon as we reached our altitude, I don't know if you noticed that, we were starting to pick up speed because we changed out of speed mode, and as soon as the aircraft changes out of speed mode, now you have to manually take control of the throttle. So I'm pulling a little bit back out of it. We're going to start to climb at a higher rate of speed here in just a moment. We're so close to 10,000, I probably could have just let it gone up to 290 and continued our climb. So I'm going to do that right now. Climb altitude is 33,000. Our cruise altitude is 33,000. So I'm going to push up to at least, we'll say 20, we're going to do 30 to start, because it usually gets difficult to climb at that point. So now I want to climb again, and we're going to do, and what I'm going to do actually is start to speed up the aircraft. So I'm going to manually accelerate, get it up to about 290. We'll adjust it here. Once we get to about 280, I'm going to go ahead and engage speed to start our climb. So 280 is about to hit here. So we'll engage speed mode. We're starting our climb. We'll put the plane in a climb detente. And then we'll manually adjust the speed to 290. I want it to climb at a little faster speed. So you can see again on the flight mode annunciator climb 290. And we'll continue our climb up to cruise altitude, still following the standard instrument departure out. I'll just show you that here. So here we are. Alright, we flew out here, still following the SID out, getting ready to cross the transition waypoint into our flight plan at Digis. So at least on this flight, so far we're already well above what the airspeed was from our last flight for our emergency landing. I mean, before I couldn't even get the aircraft to fly above 250 knots indicated airspeed. At least it's responding much more appropriately, up near 290 and climbing at a pretty good rate. Right, 1,900, now 2,000, 2,100 feet per minute. We're above 10,000 feet, so we can also turn off our landing lights, free the passengers from their seatbelts, so we'll just go down here to auto and everything. They should be happy. Take a look at our warning. So we've got, yep, anti-ice wing and Cal anti-ice is on, which is expected. Perfect. No concerns here. Now, why is my legs not showing me where we are in the flight plan? Yes. I like to see also, this is something that I recently learned, I want to modify this navigation display so I can see what my waypoints are. So we go down to, I think it's deep data. No, that's not it. Let's go back to this one here, advanced, and turn on our vertical navigation information, VNav. So yeah, so now we're heading to the next waypoint. Is it the DORAP? Again, why this page, this legs page should be advancing automatically. So DORAP is our next at 16.6 nautical miles. No, that's not active. It's 13 nautical miles in closing. So this is not adjusting. And we have long since passed our transition altitude, so I'm seeing now on the primary flight display the flashing barometric pressure. We do need to go to standard. So we did that. What else do I need to clean up? What else am I forgetting about? Everything else looks good. Just spot check the ecass pages. Still following our flight plan, no issues. Radars are fine. Is that lightning outside? What is that flashing? Stop that. I don't know, but I hope the weather improves here at some point, or we fly above the clouds. So I see temperatures now starting to get cold, so we're certainly in icing conditions. Well, I wish there was more for you to see outside. We're going to continue climbing up to our cruise altitude. This is probably a good place to go ahead and stop. On our way to Vienna, Austria. And you know what I did forget to do? I actually forgot to turn on the recording software, so I didn't record this flight. That burns me. I really wanted to be able to visually show, but I'll fly this again in clear weather and just capture some of that footage to show you the beautiful scenery here as we depart Switzerland heading for Austria. Anyways, I'm Liam Locke. This is Aircraft Adventures. I do appreciate you watching. Definitely come back and watch part 2 of the landing into Vienna so I can finally pull that off, and we're certainly not going to have an emergency landing in this flight. Everything should go pretty smoothly. If you like this video, hey, please click the like button. I would appreciate it. And if you'd like to see more of these, I try and post them when I can. Click that subscribe button and you get notified of when I post my next flight. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.